Everyone hits a bump in the road. What do you do with it? Be inspired as we explore the ways people experience, navigate, and manage the ups and downs and twists and turns in this road trip called life. Welcome to another episode of Bump in the Road. The basic podcast is always free. We also have a premium subscription called Bump 2 that lets you listen in on extended behind-the-scenes conversations with our guests. Check it out at www.bumpintheroad.us. Naimah Bhuruku lives in a world of possibility. She has a dream job at NASA where she is a diversity and inclusion specialist, building organizational relationships and partnerships within NASA and beyond. She has a BA in African Studies and an MS in Human Resource Management, both from the University of Maryland. But most of all, Naimah has an outlook on life that we can all benefit from, and it's all come about from a pretty significant bump in the road. Naimah, welcome to Bump in the Road. I'm so glad to have you here. If you would, tell us your story.
Wow. Yes, I am super excited to be here. And my story, I pondered on where exactly to start in my story, but my major bump in the road started in 2015. It was a year that I was really healthy and active and doing all the things, right? All the things. And I went on a trip and I had a bit of a bump on my neck, quite literally a bump on my neck. And I was like, what is this? Did I pull a muscle? Because I was doing a boot camp and it was bugging me. And I'm someone who just always I have health insurance, I'm grateful for that. I'm going to the doctor if something seems off. So I went to the doctor. And I'll never forget that. And it was in May, and went in and got a checkup, and my doctor was like, hey, we're going to keep you for a little while longer. We're going to run a bunch of tests. And that just started the beautiful chaos of my cancer journey. It was in that moment where I thought it would be a 1-hour check-in that ended up being a 4-hour check-in, and my doctor was insistent on staying until she knew exactly what was going on, because I had had a previous appointment with her. And she was like, I think you might have cancer, and I think it might be lymphoma. And that was just my world turned inside out and outside in, upside down, left and right from that point, and it began there.
What type of lymphoma were you diagnosed with?
I was diagnosed with stage 2 Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's a blood cancer. It's in the family of leukemia, lymphoma, all of that.
What sort of treatments were recommended?
So I initially it was the regimen was chemo and radiation, and I did a series of things in between once I got diagnosed that later changed some of that regimen, where I just had to do chemo without the radiation.
Was it R-CHOP or?
It was, oh my goodness, ABVD. ABVD was the regimen.
Lots of fun, right?
Oh, so much fun. It was a whole party. Yeah.
So when you come out, going through this is so hard. It's so hard to explain to somebody who hasn't been through it. But, you kind of, I think at least you kind of just get brave and tough. You do what you have to do, but then it ends. Treatment ends. Then what?
Well, I sometimes feel, if you're blessed to make it to the other side after treatment, the then what is probably the hardest question that you go back and forth with. It's like, hey, life's back to normal, but it's anything but normal, because your frame of reference for time, at least for me, completely changed Do I have enough time? You start thinking about every little thing that's going on in your body. And fear is a huge thing. Anxiety is a huge thing. All these things that they don't necessarily tell you. I don't know that they would know entirely, unless you talk to someone else who is a survivor or thrivers, which I'd rather say. And the then what has been it'll be my forever journey after cancer, and I'm still discovering what that is.
You're 6 years out. How has the then what changed over that period?
Well, so January actually made it 5 years.
Okay.
And how has that changed? I think that the first year it was more of, did that really just happen? Because you go into this like autopilot and of survival and caring for yourself and managing the emotions of everyone who's around you, whether you're intentionally doing or unintentionally doing it. You just go into this. It's survival. So when I came out, it was a huge. I didn't realize it was PTSD, but it was PTSD. Where then I started to feel the things that I suppressed in order to get through the treatment. Smell, sounds, any little thing. It was fear, fear and gratitude. It was a mix of those two things, very heavy. In the first year, and then I sought therapy, which was an ultimatum from my oncologist. They're like, you're either going to take something that is going to medicate you for your anxiety, or you're going to go get therapy. And I, being someone who just in general didn't like taking so many things, which is another part of the journey, even in my treatment, I sought help, and I didn't realize how much it would help me, but it really helped me to reset what this new life was going to be, because I could still be myself, but knowing who this new self was in this way after having experienced that, I really needed support and coaching in that.
I think everybody does, and unfortunately everybody doesn't get it because your life has so fundamentally changed. It's your perspective on life often changes so profoundly that you're off on a totally different path than you ever could have dreamed of.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. I think that before cancer, I was already a carefree, fun person. And then I think after cancer, I had shifted into this gratitude-filled space that I was like, I can't waste my time with this, that, and this. And it was another extreme. It was another extreme where I became hard on myself about just not getting it together. And that was the voice in my head, get it together. You're alive. You're cancer-free. You're going to do everything and then some. And so that became exhausting because it wasn't sustainable. So it was just a pendulum that swings back and forth, and it was a wide swing. I think the swing is much less now. It's much more manageable, but it's still a pendulum that swings. You go from one to the other of I need to do everything, and then you're just you can't do everything to make up for time. That's a great
description, actually, because it goes from gratitude to fear, from all these extreme emotions that are contrary to each other.
Yeah.
That's one of the best descriptions I've ever heard of the whole thing.
Yeah. That's what it felt like. It's definitely a ride that you don't want to be on, but you have no choice to be on it. And you're I'm literally feeling motion sickness from it all. But the support and the help, having that, it helps to ground, Well,
what advice would you give to somebody facing something like this?
Well, for one, I would say to be willing to ask for help. That was something that I didn't do enough. I was gracious. I had gracious friends and family who did as much as they could with what they knew, but I didn't tell them enough of what I needed because I was too afraid of even recognizing the space that I was in. So be willing to ask for help. And even if it's just like company or someone to come and support your caregiver, um, if it's like a meal for them, because that's another thing, right? That's another dynamic, having a caregiver that's in this with you. So that would be one. The other I would say is get help, support from a therapist. I wish I had done that or sooner. I didn't wait until after. I wish that I had done it throughout. But so that's another. And the main thing that I think the umbrella of all of that is advocate for yourself, because I did some things that were untraditional in my treatment that some doctors were not aware of, but I know for a fact that it was a part of my journey that impacted me positively in my healing and recovery.
I know I used acupuncture through treatment, which was amazing. And I really believe in kind of finding the best of all medical modalities to support you as you go through this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I did the same. I will say that before I got, once I got a diagnosis, there was something in me. It was an intuitive knowing, I would say, from God. I am Muslim, so I reference God as Allah. And it was just an intuitive knowing to slow down, because once you get diagnosed, there's a flurry of advice that's being given to you, everything that you need to do now, expeditiously, and that adds to the anxiety, right? And not everyone is explaining, and the terms you can't pick up on. So I took some time to slow down, and that was with intention, and with intention without knowing exactly what that was for. And it was during the time, and it's so funny because today is the first day of Ramadan, which is a holy month for me. And gosh, I'm going to get emotional because one of the reasons why I paused is because I didn't know if it was going to be my last Ramadan. And here we are 5 years later, right? I was like, if I'm not right with God all the way, I'm going to take this time to be meditative and pray for guidance on what direction I need to take. And I did that. And that was against the recommendation of my oncologist. Some family members were not necessarily, they're like, are you sure you want to wait? And I was like, I asked one oncologist who happened to be Muslim, and I was like, am I going to die if I don't do anything in a month? And he was like, no. And I was like, well, then we're going to wait. And that is what I did. And that was a start of advocating for myself. So I fasted, all while knowing that I had cancer inside me. I didn't know how fast it was growing. I didn't know what was the impact. I fasted. I cut out sugar. I cut out flour. I cut out processed foods. I went straight alkaline diet and followed some of the regimen of Dr. Sebi. If you're familiar with who he is, if you're not, any listeners, you can look into him. He's since passed, but it was holistic healing. And in addition to that, I sought out support from a traditional Chinese medicine doctor, Dr. Chen, Zisong Chen. It was incredible and amazing. And I did acupuncture all throughout my treatment. And he made herbs for me that were specific to my needs. And he took into account the blood work that I would get, that I would get in the meantime, to just do some preventative measures before I started treatment. And I know for a fact that that was the best foundational setting for myself, because for me to walk into this journey with a clear mind and knowing that I'm going to be advocating for myself. So there's so many pieces to that, but that's part of the advice I said. Advocate for yourself. Slow down if you need to process some of it. You can't spend an eternity processing it, but what you feel moved to do that, because your conscience will be, you will feel, at least I felt, that I did all that I could, that I knew was in my power. And when I started my treatment, they got me staged, because at this point I wasn't even staged entirely. I wasn't staged. And so I just knew I had cancer. And when I went in, they were like, we don't know what you did, but your tumors have shrunk, so you don't have to do radiation. You're just going to do the chemo. And I was like, that was a God nudge, and I had no idea what I was doing, but it mattered.
Have you kept up with the dietary changes?
Some of it, not most of it, because here, one of the things that happened once I started treatment is that they're like, are you vegan for any reason? I was like, kind of, sort of. And they're like, if you're gonna start this treatment because your blood counts are low, you're gonna need to eat a steak or something, because you're gonna be struggling. And so I was like, okay. And I talked to my Dr. Chen, and I was like, what do you think about this? He said, just do everything with balance. And that was the advice that he gave me. He said, don't overthink this. You don't have to be a vegan. You don't have to be anything. Just balance. So he was a coach for me throughout the time. Sorry, I'm gonna hang this up real quick. Another phone was ringing. So yeah, he was an advocate on just like balance. Do what you can when you can, and if not, then don't beat yourself up over it.
I think those are wise words. How I'm curious, how has this whole experience changed the trajectory of your life?
Well, I would say that I have probably gained my voice back as a result of cancer. What I mean by that is that I was someone who always internalized other people's stuff, my own stuff, buried it, my own traumatic experiences. And I had a great upbringing. It wasn't even that, but just I've had some losses. I take other people's stuff, I internalize it, I bury it, and carry it as my own. I was someone that was always like very emotional, but didn't know why I was emotional, but came to learn that I was a deep empath. And what I've learned is how to manage that and honor it at the same time. So after going through this experience and realizing that stand up for yourself, do the things that you want, speak whatever's on your mind. It's okay to be sensitive, because sensitive is really just being for me, an empathetic person, being able to feel what other people feel. It really shifted my perspective on almost everything in my life, like how I relate to people, how I relate to myself, like how, the experiences that have come in my life and what it means, like being able to extract the good and, and leave the bad, and knowing that it shapes me, but knowing that it's not everything, right? Like I have a choice. And from that point on, I shifted my career. I completely have sought the things that, I wanted to do. Like I learned how to fly a plane. I flew a plane. Like there's different things that I did. I went on Groupon and found all these random things and just started doing them, like pottery. Like, why am I going to wait? And I got much more comfortable in doing things by myself, because not everybody is ready for that. Like what it is, like they don't have the same feeling like time is a gift. Like, like you have no idea. There's so many people who've started with me in the cancer journey who are no longer here. And for me, I feel like even honoring their lives, it requires me to honor my own.
If you had it to do all over again, would you change anything?
Not a thing. And I feel like I'm so much better for it. The journey, it has made me realize what the gift of life is. And even though it was hard, it was incredibly hard. For me, in my belief, God doesn't give you anything greater than you can bear. And that is a quote directly from the Quran. And I believe that entirely. You're given things, and it's not just for you, it's for other people. So what I found is that the more I've shared my journey, the more it has liberated me, and it took me away from this was my experience, and shifted it to this is an experience for other people as well. Because I've seen the changes in the dynamic of my relationships with friends, family, all of that. And it's something that I am just so grateful for, because I don't know I would even be here talking to you, if that was the case. I wouldn't have switched the career that I love, that I get to connect with people in a very deep way. I wouldn't be doing all these things. I wouldn't have tried all these things that I was afraid to do, or I was waiting to do. And so that is a gift, because it allowed me to just move into the space of taking every ounce of life and really taking a sip on it and enjoying it.
Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found something in today's podcast that inspires you along your own life's path, because sometimes a bump in the road is actually a portal into a more conscious and meaningful life. You can subscribe to our free podcast at www.bumpintheroad.us or become a premium member to hear the full conversation. Just go to www.bumpintheroad.us for more information and to sign up.